In the past year, we've driven 25,000 miles through 27 different states, all while carrying our bikes on our RockyMounts BackStage bike rack. You can see here that the bikes tend to bounce around a lot going down the road, and the bigger the bumps, the worse it gets. Since our rig is our home, our bikes have to go everywhere that we go. Most of the time, the highways and bridges are pretty smooth, but some of the bridge joints can be pretty rough.
Oh, that was a good one. There we go, good.
We've been through our fair share of construction zones, and down some pretty gnarly, bumpy trails. We drove countless miles exploring BLM land looking for the perfect campsite. All of those miles have added up and really taken their toll on the bike rack. It probably doesn't help that we have e-bikes, which makes them heavier than a typical bike. Every bump the truck experiences gets sent directly through the hitch to the bike rack. And as you can see in this sped up video, those bumps add up pretty fast. Figuring out a way to carry our bikes was one of the most technically challenging aspects of getting our rig ready. We put a lot of work and research into the rig, and at the very last minute, about the last week before we had to leave, we realized that we didn't have a good way to carry the bikes, and we thought we would just grab a bike rack and throw it together and be done. That is not how it went. We wrote an article about that process that I'll link in the description below, and I'm actually going to be updating that with the new information. I figured that I would show you guys what I was doing and give you some information on what we've discovered about this bike rack. It is probably the highest quality bike rack I could find on the market. The only other option I have at this point is probably to build my own custom setup, which I do have some ideas for. We're starting our next leg of our trip. We'll be out for the next year, and I expect that to be in at least another 20,000 miles, if not 30. I'm really concerned about these bike racks not holding up. Even with my new solution, I think that is going to just transfer the force somewhere else, and something else is going to break. So I'll go through this and show you what I've done. Maybe in another 6 months I'll make a video showing the results of those modifications. After the first 7,000 miles, I started to notice that my bike was leaning in the bike rack. Upon closer inspection, I could tell that something was starting to let go. I disassembled the rack, and I discovered what seemed to be some pretty bad damage. What it looked like at first glance was that the steel had fatigued and cracked, and ripped the nuts right through. We realized that it probably wasn't safe to continue driving like this, and decided to give RockyMounts a call for some advice. After talking for a little while, they explained to us that because we were using a hitch extension, it voids the warranty on the bike rack. Even though it wasn't covered by warranty, they were nice enough to offer to send us the parts anyway so that we could get back on the road. It took about 5 days to arrive. We got it installed and then headed off to our next destination. Fast forward about 8,000 miles, and that brings us to today. Let's see how it held up. We had been stationary for about 2 months, and during that time I completely forgot about the bike rack situation. However, as we started to pack up camp and load the bike rack onto the truck, I inspected it and noticed some new cracks had formed. We knew we had to fix it soon.
You can kind of see right here, the metal's starting to let go. I don't really have a good fix for this yet. I think what I'm probably going to do is
put some fender washers on there and try to distribute the load a little bit better.
It's not perfect, but hopefully it'll help. We're gonna go a few hundred miles at a time, and I'm gonna keep an eye on it. And at some point I'll come up with a better solution.
With the temporary repairs made, we loaded up the bikes and got ready to head to Maine. While loading the bikes, I noticed that the mount holding Sasha's bike was starting to crack in the exact same spot that mine had 7,000 miles earlier. With all of these new cracks forming, I knew that I would need to stop somewhere and fix this problem before it got too much worse. One of the problems we have with having a truck camper is to have the bikes on the back, we needed to have a receiver extension. We originally purchased a 48-inch extension that I shortened to about 38 or 40 inches to bring everything in closer to the truck and minimize the distance that it stuck out. It's a 2.5 inch to 2 inch adapter as well as an extension. I drilled an additional hole, that's why you can see it sticking back further here. I drilled an additional hole, maybe 5, 6, 7 inches to shorten this a little bit to bring the bikes in closer to the truck. That extension comes out, And I have this double hitch, which at this point I'm just using as an extension. I also have a hitch tightening device in here and locks, and this bolt right here, you tighten it down and it becomes a wobble stopper for the RockyMounts rack. At this point I don't use this second hitch. It might come in handy someday, but it's actually been great for storing my hoses around, and it gives me a place to attach bungee cords. This is the other side. You can see the bike rack comes out, and this is the main body of the rack. Whenever you have an extension on your hitch, it kind of amplifies the movements of the truck. We can see it in the rearview camera when we're driving down the road and we hit a big bump like a bridge joint. The bikes will just slam back and forth pretty hard, and that puts a lot of stress on the bike rack. That's actually why I found that almost no bike rack manufacturers will offer a warranty if their bike rack is used with an extension. This is one of the mounts that goes on to the bike rack itself to hold the bikes. And you can see here that the metal had fatigued and broke. Same thing here. This is the original one. I did keep it because I thought I might be able to reuse it in the future. Even though it wasn't covered under warranty, they sent me one anyway, letting me know that it was kind of a one-time deal and that they can't support hitch extensions because of the mechanical problems that they impose on the bike rack. And I completely agree with that. I can see why. The rest of the rack is held up very well. The biggest problem is these, where the sheet metal fatigue. And the next problem that I'm seeing is now this plate is cracking right here. So that's starting to let go, and I can see that's just another fatigue crack. This is actually pretty solid stuff. The welds are holding up well. This is where Sasha's bike sits, and this has been fine. I don't see any signs of cracking on this one. With my bike, which is, it's an e-bike, it's about 45 pounds, maybe 47 pounds. I keep that closest to the truck because that's what they recommend. The heaviest bike needs to be closest to the vehicle. Still a pretty heavy bike, but it's still under their weight rating. The other bike that we're carrying is my wife's bike. That's a smaller, lighter bike. I would say that's probably 40 pounds, and that sits on the rack farthest away from the truck. The bracket, I don't know what to call this unit, but this thing held up pretty well for hers. We've gotten 18,000 miles of hauling the bikes. And hers just started to let go. Actually, this is hers, and you can see here that the sheet metal's let go. So I have been pondering my options on how to fix this. I went to West Marine yesterday, and I ended up finding some U-bolts that I've been looking for online for about 5 months. I could never find the exact perfect size, and they surprisingly had them. Ever since our first incident, I had been looking for the correct size U-bolt to help strengthen the rack, but I couldn't find anything, not even online. On our way up the coast of Maine, we stopped in Portland at a West Marine. I was looking for some zero-gauge cable and copper lugs for our new battery setup, but to my surprise, I ended up finding exactly what I was looking for. These U-bolts and frame straps were the perfect size for what I was trying to do. Now that I had the correct parts, all I had to do was install them and hope that it would actually fix the problem. It was a huge relief finding the parts that I needed within a couple days of us leaving. I don't know if this is actually going to fix the problem long term. It may just end up moving the problem somewhere else along the bike rack. My hope is that this will buy us some time while I come up with a better solution. Obviously, using hitch extensions adds a lot of extra force to any bike rack that you might be using. I have no hopes that this is going to survive any more than, say, another 10 or 15,000 miles. So between now and then, I really need to come up with a better way to carry our bikes. I think these U-bolts will definitely add some strength and slow down the deterioration process. My goal with this repair was to move the attachment points closer to the main beam where the welds are. I'm really curious to see how long it will last and what will crack next. I wanted to record a little update on the bike rack situation. We are in northern Maine along the coast, right next to the Canadian border. Found this awesome little boondock spot. They allow parking, which is pretty nice. It's right next to the river and the waterfall over there. We've put a few hundred miles on, and I wanted to show you what the U-bolts look like now and see how they've held up. This is the first time I've taken the cover off in a couple days. I want to check it out and see how these U-bolts have held up. So looking at the U-bolts, nothing has loosened up yet. You can see here that the surface has stayed flat, even though there's a big crack in this one. We can still see that my bike is at an angle, but I believe that that is permanent now. I haven't been able to straighten it any more than this. You can see that this is slightly bent. When I look underneath, you can still see that there's a crack here, but everything seems level. The U-bolts are tight and straight. I might clamp it down a little bit more on this side. There are a couple more aspects of this bike rack that I wanted to cover before the end of the video. We actually really like the bike rack. We're putting it through a lot of abuse, and we don't expect it to live forever. I think most of these bike racks are designed for people to use them on the weekends and occasionally carry their bikes where they want to go. We're using it full-time all the time. It's always behind us, and it takes a lot of abuse and bumps. It was one of the only bike racks available that could handle fat tire bikes, and it was much easier to use than some of the other brands. It does come with an integrated bike lock. It just threads through your frame, and there's a built-in lock right here. The bike rack comes with keys for all of these locks. There's a lock here to lock your bike, and a lock to actually lock the bike rack onto the truck. This is that wobble stopper bolt, and on the other side, hidden under my hoses, is the other lock, and this is an anti-theft lock. They've actually stayed very dry over the last 20 or so thousand miles. To better accommodate the fat tires, they include this extra strap, which makes it much easier to get it around the tire. Also on the front, you have this very large cup. My tires are 4-inch fat tires, and they fit comfortably in there. And you have this arm that goes up and over, which you just release and lift up. Once you have it lifted, fold it down out of the way, and then you just lift the bike off. I have a bike cover that wraps around the entire rack as well as the bicycles, so it's enclosing the bottom of them as well. This handle releases and tilts down. We don't ever use this because we just swing the bike rack out of the way. This secures the bike rack in a closed position, which I do need to lubricate occasionally. And then this pin releases and the bike rack opens. It works very well. The pin also locks here, and this entire thing will swing open, and then locks once again in the open position. They also include this pad under here. It gives it a ramp to slide up onto the support. And then once again, this thing locks back. That kind of holds it in place while you screw it all back together. I have found that in order to get this tight, I have to wiggle it to get a kind of a neutral position. Sometimes when it's up there, I'll have Sasha wiggle the whole bike rack as I tighten it. In the kit, they did include a spare one of these handles, which was really good because we were pulling out of somewhere and it snapped off. But I will say that compared to some of the other brands out there, this thing is super rugged. We like the rack. It's held up extremely well. I'd love to know what you think about all this. If you have any ideas on how to fix it, and if you want to share your setups, I would love to know how you guys are transporting your bikes, especially if they're e-bikes. I know that there's a lot of full-timers out there that have the same bike rack, and I'm super curious to see if you guys have the same cracking issue with these crossbars. They're super rugged. I really like them. I think it's a great design. It handles the fat tires really well. I don't know if these are still, these tire cup supports fold down out of the way. It works very well. It's a really, really good bike rack. The only issue I have is that, and I can also completely understand the mechanics of why it would break. I don't expect this to go 100,000 miles, but I'd like it to. If you're looking for more information on this bike rack, our friend Amber over at Story Chasing did an in-depth review on her setup. She also has a fat tire e-bike and covers many details that I didn't get to in this video. While you're over there, check out some of her other great content. Thank you for watching. If you liked what you saw, please leave a comment down below. Let me know what you thought. If there's anything else I should do differently or anything that I missed in this video. The rain is starting and I think we both want to go for a bike ride now.
You can go for yourself.
Why? You're not going to go?
Oh. No, it's just gonna rain now. Do you want to say thank you for watching? Bye. I'm gonna wave my hand. I think you should.
You do it.
You've been doing the whole video. I feel like it's weird that I'm here. Thank you for watching. Bye.
We saw a deer, but I got the camera out a little too late.
Record.